Okay, good evening, everyone, to the January back meeting. We'll start off with attendance. Bill Lesage back.
Suzanne Dirksen back.
Jenny Nolan, Budget Manager.
Sean Lewis, City Manager.
Sarah Stone, Deputy Director of Business Solutions in Engineering for Utilities.
Casey Allard, Deputy Director of Business Solutions for South Platte Renew.
Peter Van Rye, Director of Englewood Utilities and South Platte Renew.
Peter Eckel, Budget Advisory Committee.
And online, Jay, you want to start?
Jay Knight back.
And looks like we have Kevin on as well.
Yep, Kevin Ingles, Finance Manager.
All right, thank you, everyone. Do I have a motion to approve the December meeting minutes?
So moved.
A second?
Aye.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Right. So I think we're ready again. Thank you again for running the meeting last month. You're welcome. All right, so today we have utilities in South Platte Renew.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present to you. We have 76 slides for 75 minutes, and so we're gonna put up a whole bunch of information. And if there's a point in time you'd like us to maybe pause and stop, we do have a couple spots for breaks along the way, but I'm gonna try and go through this relatively quickly so that you can just see the volume and scope of what we're doing, and really give you a good sense overall. And if you've got the deck, so if you wanna, or we'll get you the deck. So if you wanna go back and look at anything in more detail, feel free. So we'll get it pulled up here.
Are you
Hopefully.
able to get it, Jenny?
No,
Can I just use this?
Yep.
Or,
to hook up, yeah.
yeah?
Will it show for the folks on Teams?
It should, yes. My computer just went black. Hold on, I don't know what happened here.
Says we're still recording.
Don't know why my screen went black though. That's odd.
Hey, look at that.
Oh, that's her.
Okay.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Casey.
And you don't have to take the full 75 minutes.
How many minutes would you like me to? I could do this and we could make it half that. We could do 32 and a half if you'd like. Okay, well, thank you again. We're going to start with utilities. We'll run through water and sewer. The bulk of the projects and work is on the water side. The sewer system's pretty small in comparison. And then we'll move over into South Platte Renew, give you a sense for what South Platte Renew works on and Englewood's interface with that. Okay, next slide. Okay, that's what we're gonna, oh, hey, look at that, I can do it.
Do it.
Goodness, I don't even have to. Uh-oh. Are we sure I can do it? Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Wrong one. Okay, utilities. So just as a brief overview, utilities is water and sewer, 34,000 residents, 2,100 businesses, do drinking water and wastewater collection. We have the water plant, we have a bunch of pipe, some pump stations, small storage tanks. You see the overhead storage tanks. Wastewater infrastructure is a collection system. It's actually only the the north two-thirds of the city. The southern third of the city generally is South Englewood Sanitation District. And so if you're live in the city of Englewood, on the south end of town, your collection system actually runs through a district. I actually happen to be one of those people. I live in the south part. I live in South Englewood, in the city. And then all of that is sent to South Platte Renew, which is a regional joint venture between the city of Littleton and the city of Englewood. It serves 300,000 people. So our strategic plan outcome areas are sustainability. So you can see the city stewards its resources for the benefit of current and future generations, and infrastructure. So these are the two main areas that we interface with. Maintaining cost-effective manner, improves, maintains, protects infrastructure. So essentially how this distills down is these two main things, I think, is how I would describe what we're focused on right now. We're focused on modernizing the utility and then improving the customer experience. And so you can see the sub bullets under modernize is investing in the infrastructure. replacing the assets. We have a ton of deferred maintenance that's built up over decades. Optimizing the systems that we do have. We have a lot of complex systems that actually work really well, but optimizing those and then increasing our staffing levels, which we'll touch on. And then the customer experience is the number one thing we hear is the water's not very good. We're making a concerted effort to change that. And we're a couple of years into a multi-year process and through projects and optimization to improve that. We're also focusing on financial transparency and long-term financial sustainability. And then soon we will have a new billing interface. It's been a project that's been delayed significantly, but we're almost there. And Sarah's been dealing with that for quite some time. So water fund, you can see generally the amended budget from 23 was 31 million. Where we underspent was on capital. That's because we're in this process of ramping up capital. So we somewhat over budget for it with the hope that we'll be able to execute projects sooner than what's normally possible. But it doesn't mean we lose this money. It just means that we make it available in case a project schedule is sooner than we expect, so that we're not underfunding if we have the opportunity to fund a project. As we move from planning and design to construction, we'll get to the point where we're spending the majority of that capital. On the South Platte side, this took about 4 years. We're, I think, at 91% of capital spent, 90 or 91% of our capital budget spent is what we're projecting for 23. Is that right?
It's 85 for 23,
Oh,
90% of the whole budget.
90% of the whole budget.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit down than last year. Last year we were in the low 90s. And the main reason is we have a project that the construction cash flow of the construction project is taking a little bit longer. And that's why, but all it does is it rolls over because these are two enterprise funds. 2024 budget. Uh-oh.
That's sewer
Okay.
fund.
Oh, wait. Oh, shoot. Yeah. Sorry. How do I go back? All right.
A little arrow back there.
Uh-oh.
Right there. Here, wait.
Sorry, I got too fast.
About that.
Okay, sewer fund. So sewer fund, you can see is our amended budget is 29 million. The bulk of that is funding South Platte Renew. So we have a little bit that's the collection system. We have some debt service, and ultimately it's South Platte Renew. So for 2024, our budget goes to 47 million. And if you look down at the capital line item, the main reason is that capital line item is 32 million. The main driver for that is the lead removal program. So in June timeframe, we will have a contractor on board and we will start pulling lead service lines out of our system. We've done our inventory and our potholing, which is where we actually dig down to figure out what the material is. And our estimates right now are that we have somewhere around 2,900 lead or galvanized service connections in the system. Our worst case scenario when we were master planning 4 years ago was that we were going to have 8,000. So the fact that we have 2,900 is actually really good news because it means it's a whole lot less pressure on the water fund budget. We're accessing some resources for that. And then also we can do it in 3 years as opposed to 10 years. So our timeline right now to remove all lead service lines from the city is over the next 3 years, which is a pretty aggressive timeline. Sewer fund is 29 million. Like I said, this year's SPR budget is 40 million. So the collective, so there's a double counting there because within the sewer fund for Englewood is Englewood's portion of that 39 million of the SPR budget. So it's generally 47, 29, and about 20 is the total budget across the two organizations.
Was any of the debt service from the previous slides related to WIFA? I don't know if I pronounced that right. WIFA. Like providing any, like, are we already repaying that or is that, I don't remember the terms, I know.
So the great thing about WIFIA is it's like a home equity line of credit.
And when you draw.
So it's only when we draw it. And the way we've been managing the cash flow on that, we've been pushing the draw. So we haven't actually, we closed those loans in March and April of 2020, March and April or April 9? March and April of 2022. And because of the way we're able to cash flow things, we're pushing that draw as far as possible. We anticipate that we'll draw on sewer this year, and that's to ultimately fund part of the South Platte Renew projects. What that does is it delays the interest on it.
Yeah.
So WIFIA is the fifth bullet there, is 60.5 million. We have from 2022 to 2028 to draw on that. And with our financial modeling, we're making sure that we maximize or we optimize that so we minimize the amount of interest that we're paying. You can see the new access funding is the state revolving fund for lead service line removals. Sarah just submitted that application on December 21st. We got notice last week that it's deemed complete. We anticipate closing that in March. And that is related to the infrastructure money that came out a year and a half ago, the federal funds that had, I think it was 60 billion targeting, or 49 billion targeting lead service line removal across the country. So we are going after 40 million of that through the state revolving fund. Within that, 10 million of that is principal forgiveness. So it's essentially free money. The other 30 ends up being low interest loan, and I think those rates run around 3 or just under 3%. So we were second in line behind Denver Water because we were ahead of the game on this, which the principal forgiveness amount is going away rapidly. So the fact that we are able to access 10 million is really a good news because we're ahead of schedule on all this. So that's what helps us fund that 31 million, a lot of that 31 million that you saw in the lead service line removal program. So then we also have 426,000 for PFAS. So PFAS is another thing that's a huge regulatory driver for us. We led the way on that from a statewide perspective, which allowed us to apply for grants before other agencies, and Sarah and her team secured 426,000 to study it through the basin and characterize and pilot some of the possible treatment processes. So she's working with the state and our consultant partner who helped us secure that money to execute those two projects. We also were just awarded 25,000 grant funding for our environmental compliance monitoring at the Allen Water Treatment Plant. This was something that one of our staff noticed that there was a grant, applied for it, and we got 25,000. We got that a couple of weeks ago. 5,000 in grant funding through the state turf replacement program. So that's a grant that we are accessing year over year. WIFIA, we put WIFIA up there because that is a critical component to our blend of rate and fee cash financing with the debt financing so that we can execute these projects. We do all that with a budget forecasting tool that looks out 20 years and has a 10-year solid window that we can, it's got thousands and thousands and thousands of cells that inform this iterative process where we can change debt coverage ratios and the rate increases and fee amounts and capital timing and capital expenditures to help build a model that is sustainable from a rate perspective, but also something that addresses the backlog of projects that have been building for decades. And then one of the last things that we completed towards the end of last year was the water system sells a significant amount of water to Centennial Water and Sanitation District, which is Highlands Ranch. And it's a 100-year agreement. It was executed in 2003. It's got 5 20-year terms. So we just renewed it for the second 20-year term. But one of the way the pricing on that changes is the pricing was set in 2003 and it just followed CPI. There was a provision in there that allowed for either entity to do what's called an appraisal-based analysis of that pricing. We had never done that. And if you look at the price of water compared to the CPI, water just becomes more of a scarce resource. So we had an indication that maybe we were under collecting on that water. And so this is what the result it was. So we pulled the trigger in 2021 on this, and it took until, so we noticed in February 2021 we were going to do this. It took until November of this year to complete that process. But it was worth it because what it ended up doing is, you can see the original sales amount was about 2.6, 2.7. The appraisal adjustment amount, so that was as a result of this process. We got retroactively paid for 2021, almost 700,000, 2022, almost 800,000. And we're projecting in 2023, 600,000 or 700,000 based on our annual water sales that we send. So you can see what it means for the adjusted raw water sales amount from 3.3 to 4.1. If we had not done that, we'd be under collecting annually somewhere around $700,000 or $800,000 a year. So it was a long, arduous process. It involved going to court. We actually were unsuccessful in part of the court case, but it still worked out to a lump sum revenue of 2.1 million towards the end of last year, and an ongoing revenue of around $700,000 a year. That goes right into the water fund. So that is revenue that offsets the amount that we need to raise rates. So it was a worthwhile process that really worked out well. So that's it from a financial perspective. I can pause here, or we can keep rolling. Any questions, thoughts?
Can I interject one thing on
Yes,
Livia?
please.
To answer your question on when we start paying, we don't start paying on the loan until 2031. So we've also further delayed that debt service payment.
Okay.
It's another great feature of WIFIA is we can draw for 6 years, and then you can delay for 5 years, and then it's got a 35-year payback period. And when you're thinking about the infrastructure that we're building with WIFIA, a lot of it has 50 and 60 and 70-year life cycles. And so if we cash funded that, then everybody today would be paying for the full cost of that. Whereas by using that blend of debt, someone 35 years from now will be paying their portion of that infrastructure because that piece of infrastructure is still being used, and they'll be paying their fair share, not burdening today's ratepayers with the whole cost of it. It's why utilizing a blend of rate, fee, and debt is important for today's ratepayers, so that they don't get overburdened with the costs of the system.
Thank you.
Other questions on that?
Great.
Okay. So this is what the staffing looked like in 2022. So now we're going to talk about programmatic changes that we made and things that we are investing in. So if you look at the staffing in 2022 as a director, and there are 3 essentially supervisors. There was no engineering department. We had an engineer that was mainly focused on development review and the stormwater program, but not looking at any planning of investment. We had some operators, and then we had our distribution and collection system. So over the last 3 years, we have turned that into this, which has a whole lot more resiliency. We have sub-teams, so you don't have 16 people reporting to one individual. And each one of those sub-teams has a core responsibility associated with the programmatic needs of the utility. The 3 boxes you see at the top are the deputy directors. So there's a deputy director of O&M, which is on the right-hand side, and all the main managers, the treatment, operation, or treatment, distribution, collection, environmental compliance, and source of supply. And then on the other side is business solutions and engineering. And this is where Sarah has a unique skill set in both finance and engineering. And so she's assuming both of those roles right now. We tried to recruit for a year for an engineering deputy director, and we couldn't get anybody. So she's graciously accepted both responsibilities, and it's actually kind of working out well. It is working out really well.
Kind of.
It's working out really well. Yeah, sorry, don't mean to undersell that. It's working extraordinarily well. We're focused on taste, odor, and hardness, like we talked about. You can kind of see how this became a problem. Urban runoff, development in the Southwest metro area, impacted a system that used to be all prairie, so it was pristine water. Now it's all runoff from houses and wastewater treatment plants, and so it changes the composition of the source water, and that's a lot of what's contributing to taste, odor, and hardness. we are working through that process to not just understand it from a capital investment perspective, but from a system operations perspective on how to improve that, because it's not just not one thing. There's multiple aspects to that. One of those is ozone treatment. So you can see as an aerial of the Allen plant at South Reservoir. You see where on the South Reservoir where it's all gray, that is full of solids. So when the treatment plant removes the fine particulate out of the water to treat it to drinking water, it sends it to that pond. Well, that should not be that gray, because that should be dredged out of that pond on an ongoing basis. Well, that's been building for probably 30 years, and it's full, and you can see there's actually a curtain wall in there, and it's pushing the curtain wall over. So those solids, we're pulling them out of the water, we're putting it into this water, and then we decant it directly into the North Reservoir, and then suck it right back into the plant. And so that's how the system has been operating for years. And what we've determined is a significant contributor to taste, odor, and hardness is occurring at that decant. So we're looking at ways to actually change that decant to not even send it to the North Reservoir. But we've also piloted an ozone treatment process, and that what it does is it knocks down these two constituents called MIB and geosmin, which are products of bacterial growth that create taste, odor, and hardness issues. So that's one of the areas that we're focused from an organizational perspective. Backflow prevention and cross connection, we advanced what was supposed to be a 5-year implementation program in 1 year because we violated the regulatory requirements on this. If you recall, I think it was September of 21. We sent out a notice to everybody saying we violated the Safe Drinking Water Act, went to every single customer because we didn't have a program in place that wasn't built. It was all on paper. And so in 1 year, we essentially recovered this program from a complete failure to the point where we're violating our regulations to now it's completely streamlined. We are meeting the regulations annually, and we have a complete program in place. The backflow happens annually. Cross connection we're working on right now, and we have a implementation time frame through the end of this year, and we'll meet that. We also had 6 violations in that those first couple years from 19, 20, and 21 because we had no environmental compliance framework. So this is what happens when the staffing level gets down so low that all you have is operators and people out in the field, and no one's paying attention to all the regulatory aspect of what's required. So we worked on building a regulatory compliance framework, have a regulatory compliance sub-team that's got 3 people. They're focused on lead and copper, they're focused on PFAS, they're focused on any changes to the treatment process and meeting our annual requirements. So that's all new that's been built. We have 2 elevated tanks, storage tanks that probably hadn't been inspected in a decade. So now we have an ongoing inspection of those tanks. We have a dam safety program. So annually we are assessed by the state, and we were on the verge of receiving violations from the state engineer's office because we didn't have a program in place to monitor the things that we need. Anecdotally, on McClellan Reservoir, there were these survey markers that were supposed to be taking surveys on them every 5 years. Last time it was done was 1991. So we fixed that, and now we're taking those surveys annually. And so the state actually missed that too, so we're blaming them. The one to the right is Meadow Creek Reservoir. That's up in the mountains near Fraser, Colorado. So the city owns, is a co-owner of that reservoir. And then the water that's collected in that system is actually exchanged with Denver. They take it through their systems on the northern side of the mountains, and we receive an equivalent amount of water at Chatfield.
You said we're co-owner?
Yeah, the other owner is the Madonna mine. It's Climax Mine. No, it's a Climax Mine.
It's a mining?
It's a mining company, yeah. So there's.
We built that in partnership with them back in the day.
Yeah, I don't know all the history,
Thought
but
it was ours.
it's mostly ours, but they do have an ownership component to it, and when there's something that happens when Climax Mine completes, then the ownership somehow reverts to us. So there's But they're still involved. They're still a minor owner to it. We're the major owner of the reservoir.
And it goes through Denver.
And so Denver actually manages it. So it's integrated to Denver's system. So we have the reservoir and an 11-mile pipeline that is owned by Englewood. Denver manages both of those and takes the water, and then they give us an equivalent amount of water at Chatfield, which is where we need it. LAS chemical conversion, so we completed that last year. So we used to use what's called aqueous ammonia. Aqueous is one of those things which, if you see that white tank, that's in a room. If it was leaking and you walked in, it would result in your rapid acceleration towards death, much like chlorine. So it's a very, very dangerous chemical. We had it, and when I got here, is one of the things that made me most nervous was the maintenance guy said, well, yeah, this is part of our disinfection process. And he said, well, yeah, so it crystallizes in the ejection point. So what we do about once a year is we take a piece of all thread, like, and we shove it in the injector to root out the crystals. And instantly red flags went up all over the place. And so, because it didn't seem like a sustainable long-term solution for the disinfection. Now, I mean, it always worked. We never had a problem with it, but it was just too much of a risk. We converted to what's called LAS, which is a liquid ammonium sulfate, much more inert chemical, much safer to our workers, and didn't really result in much modification, just some piping and cleaning out the tank.
What was the old system called?
Aqueous ammonia so it was aqueous ammonia, which is the dangerous stuff. Liquid ammonium sulfate, which is much safer. It does the same thing. So it turns chlorine into chloramines, and chloramines are what is the disinfection process that is used by everybody on the Front Range. We installed 35 drinking water sample stations. So if you recall, there was a point in time in August of 2021 where we had a boil order. The boil order was because you see that little pit there, that pit on a sample in somewhere down in here, I believe is where it was. It wasn't even in the city. It was outside of the city, but it was in our service area. Was leaking and had sucked, had turned into a bunch of muck water. And what we used to do is we used to pull those samples off of people's hose bibs. And that was a standard practice 40 years ago. And what it does is it introduces a person's home into that process. So we get a distribution system to the meter pit, and then the home is between the meter pit and where we take the sample. Well, what happened was that water was contaminated, got sucked in because there was a leak, and we pulled it right out right here. So what we did last year is we installed 35 drinking water sample stations. So now we eliminate the home from this process, and we are truly testing the closest point throughout the city of the distribution system, which is what we have to monitor for. And you see all those. You see how we have a random distribution of those locations that we. So that was just a modernization that would have prevented that issue. Plus we were understaffed, plus. So I think this is just another improvement that, valve replacement and maintenance and exercising. So we'll get line breaks, and then someone will go turn a valve, and then it'll break. And then they'll have to turn 2 more valves, and then instead of putting 3 people out of water, we're putting 2 blocks out of water. So we've had our first go around of 60 valves that we knew were broken that we got replaced this year. And we'll have an ongoing program to replace valves as they break. We also have a valve exerciser, which is someone who goes out and just turns the valve once every 3 years, because some of these valves haven't been turned in probably 20 years. And it's water, so you get a lot of rust, and when you turn them, you basically break the nut off, and now you've got a broken valve. So these programmatic things, I think, are one of the most significant aspects that we've changed. We also do an annual customer survey. Sarah just reported out those results. And we've done it for 2 years. I'm interested to see how this looks over 5 years. I think we don't have enough. It's still too close to really see if we're starting to see trends. I think the one positive was 300 less people filled it out this year. So you usually fill stuff out when you're mad. Maybe we think it's good. So, but we'll keep monitoring it. That's the thing. We have a number of capital projects. We have electrical instrumentation and controls. So the control system for the plant was essentially 2 computer CPUs sitting under a desk. If you look at a modern water treatment plant, there's a whole server room that's got a whole SCADA infrastructure. So we built all that, and we have an ongoing replacement process for motor control centers and our programmable logic controls and our human machine interfaces. All these things that one of the other things that was alarming when I first got here was the filter interface panel, where so these are the filters, kind of an important step in the treatment process, where the only place they could get parts for it was on eBay. So if something was breaking down in the brains of the filter, they had to go on eBay to get the replacement parts. So we fixed that. And now we've got an ongoing annual investment process to replace those things, many of which are well past their useful life. But we'll get through and modernize all those things. Space, right now utilities is in 4 temporary construction trailers. A lot of the people are in 4 temporary construction trailers. We only have really 2 rooms in the Allen plant. So you can see the top drawing is a top view of the Allen plant, and you can see those offices towards the top. That's if you're going down Layton, you kind of see the roof of the filters. So we're going to build a 2nd story on that, put some offices in the conference room there, and then where the yellow is a new administrative building to house engineering, environmental programs, and offices for management. It's a smaller footprint than what was originally conceived when we were originally talking about a complete investment in the service center and centralization for the city, because a lot of that is contingent on what's going on with this facility. And so this is the type of building that if somewhere down the roads, 10 years from now, the decision is to build a whole new centralized facility at South Platte at the service center, that this isn't like this massive capital investment that's now lost. But we also want to make it so that if it needs to be used for the next 30 years, so we're trying to make it simple enough that if it goes away in 10 years, it wasn't a waste. But if it is needed for 30 years, it's also doesn't become outdated or obsolete. Same thing with that's our building at the service center. That's the utilities building, and then we're adding a wing because right now our distribution and collection staff, essentially their desks are in a garage bay and they share desks. When I first got here, none of them had computer access. They didn't have laptops, and so when we're sending things, like HR things and things like that, they had to get on a common computer. So we're making it so people feel like they actually are part of this organization, and that's more of an addition. And then we'll rehab that. We'll rehab building 11 because it's actually in good shape. So we'll repaint it, clean it, things like that. Solids handling. This is directly related to that south settling pond. You can see that belt filter press. The original use of that was a fruit press. The city bought it used, so it pressed like grapefruit or orange. Well, now we press water out of solids from a water plant. It's just old and it's old and tired and obsolete. And you can see in the trailer is a contractor that we hired who had a mobile centrifuge. So we're going to replace the belt filter press with a centrifuge, which should allow us to clear out those solids over the next few years, and then get to a sustainable. When we put solids into the pond, we pull them out at an equal rate so that we don't get into the situation where we build it up again.
And is long-term to continue to use a contractor for that? Is
No.
that how it works?
No, so we got a contractor for the 2 years to buy us some time.
Yeah.
And we didn't catch up. We basically bought ourselves a little bit of time. It's gonna still take about 3 years, we think, 3 to 4 years of running that permanent system, a whole lot more than we run the belt filter press to actually catch up. So we were just so out of storage space that we needed to do something immediately, and so we hired a contractor for 2 years. That cost $600,000 for 2 years, and they took out 800 tons of solids. There's still 2,300 tons in there, and we keep putting them in every year. So the long-term solution is a centrifuge because it's much more efficient and widely used throughout the industry. City dish piping, this is a critical one that you've probably heard a lot about. We're closing those last reaches of open channel section to have a direct connect from Chatfield to the Allen plant to allow us to access water much more frequently from Allen plant because the hardness is much lower at the Allen plant. It's significantly lower at the Chatfield than it is at Union Ave. And so then Union Ave becomes more of a redundant system. It actually creates redundancy in the system. We had an issue a few weeks ago where in this area right here, this is Marcy Gulch where Centennial Water and Sand, Highlands Ranch, their wastewater plant is. So all of Highlands Ranch ends up discharging their wastewater there. Our intake for the Allen plant is right here. And they had a overflow at their plant this is like about 3 or 4 weeks ago. They notified us. We were able to turn off Union Ave, pull from the north reservoir, and then turn on the ditch. It takes about 14 hours to turn on the ditch when it's an open ditch. And that allowed us, and when we ran the ditch for like 5 days, fortunately it wasn't really cold, so we didn't have icing issues. But what this does is if we have these types of problems, we will have the ditch running all the time, we'll have Union Ave running all the time, so we'll be able to flip between the two and also blend. So it's a critical project. Lead reduction, we talked a little bit about that. You can see it's a 3-year program. We've been aggressively going after that. We anticipate by the end of 3 years that we should get almost all, if not all of them removed from the system, which is really good from a health and safety perspective for our customers. Valves and water line, this is an ongoing program. As we break valves, we're gonna fix them. We combine that with our water line replacement. One of the things that we're actually looking at right now as a focus area is we have these transmission mains that don't have redundancy. So if one of them blows up, we end up with a real problem. So we're looking at fixing some of those. The one we're focused on right now is Union Ave. There's a lot of truck traffic on there, and we've had 19 breaks on this line in the last 5 or 8 years. So it breaks a lot. So we're gonna fix that line. But we're also looking at, we have a lot of what's called unlined 4-inch, and that's the stuff that has a whole bunch of corrosion on the inside. So it just over time, it goes from a clean pipe to just, it constricts. And so we estimate we have about 20 miles of that. So that's one of our main focus areas, is to slowly over time remove all that, because we think that'll help from a distribution system perspective. Pump station, we've got 4 main pump stations, 5 actually when you count the one at the treatment plant. Some of those have circa 1964 original equipment. It's been, oftentimes held together with, it's not literally duct tape and baling twine, but it seems like duct tape and baling twine. There's been so we're looking at those and overhauling those to the degree that that they need to. We bid out on the CNH pump station, which is right near the hospital. That's a booster pump station within the distribution system. That's a critical one. And then we're actually focusing on the pump station that's at the Allen treatment plant, because essentially that's the system that sends water into the distribution. That's such a critical one that just needs to be rehabbed and updated.
Is the picture on the right McClellan?
Can you go back?
Yep.
The wood?
The wood panel one is Union Ave. The one to the, I believe the McClellan is the upper left, and I think the wood panel one is Union. I think that's Union, and then McClellan's the one that looks even smaller. Okay. We're converting to advanced metering. This will help customers understand real time their water use. It also allows us to more effectively use staff so that we're not, it takes a lot of time to manually walk through a neighborhood and read. Advanced metering, a lot of utilities are moving to this because essentially what it does is it uses cellular communication to relay from the meter to a cell tower to the utilities control center, and we'll be able to have, people will be able to log in online and they'll be able to monitor their water use hour by hour. They'll have much more greater degree of visibility into how they use water, if they want to change their water habits, if they have a leak, if they have some kind of an issue. We can set it up so when we see spikes that don't look normal, we can flag them to see if there is a leak, and then we can proactively reach out to the customer to let them know that they have a leak. So that's actually beginning construction this spring. And then this is a critical one from the resiliency. So the blue is Englewood Water Utility, the red is Denver Water. So we are completely surrounded by Denver Water on all sides. There used to be 3 interconnections between the 2 systems. They were abandoned decades ago. We have worked with Denver Water to reestablish those. And essentially, that is our backup system. So if something catastrophically goes wrong with the plant or some main transmission line, we have this ability to access Denver Water for a short period of time in an emergency and switch over so that we're not, without water for days and days and days. From a resiliency perspective, this is the most important project to give us redundancy and resiliency. And we are in design right now, construction late this year, early next year. This is a big deal. This is a good one. Some metrics to understand, just some general things to report on. I'll go down to number 5. So water line breaks last year, we had 32. The year before we had 60. We've had 13 in the last 9 days. So our crews are out constantly right now because when it got really, really cold, the lines broke. And then when it thaws back out, we get even more breaks because of the way it shifts. So we anticipate that, so the goal for a system our size is that we should be at like about 41 breaks per year. That'd be standard for age of system. 60 is more than that. We had a decent year last year. We anticipate this year that we'll be exceeding the industry standard of 41. But that's been a real focus as of late. That and power outages from Excel. We've had 4 power outages at the water plant in the last 2 weeks from Excel. So we're trying to get Excel to pay closer attention to us, since it's kind of a critical facility. It is a critical facility. But they're not treating it as if it's a critical facility. We don't feel. And so we're working to get it up higher on their priority list. Another example of how far we've come, 2 years ago, we had a windstorm and the power went out. The backup generator didn't convert over like it was supposed to because there was a project a decade and a half ago that saved $60,000 by not putting in this automatic switch because of how much it cost. And so it didn't automatically switch. And as a result, the plant started flooding because they couldn't get it manually turned fast enough. We had these power outages over the last couple weeks, and we installed that manual switch, one of the first projects we did. And it switched over to the backup generator all 4 times without issue. It does have a challenge coming back, so that's the thing we're working on, is it trips some things and it's causing our operators to go through and reset things, but it's a whole lot better than it was. And once it flips over to backup power, it runs on a diesel generator and it runs the plant. So it's in a lot better shape. So there's a snapshot of utilities.
Any questions? Anybody on the phone?
Okay, we'll keep rolling. So South by Renew. So this is our regional water. So half of my job is utilities, half of my job is South by Renew. So this is where South Platte Renew, this is our service area. The blue is Englewood, the pinkish is Littleton. All those other areas are connector districts through Littleton and Englewood. It's a 108 square mile service area. There's 19 connector districts, 13 of them come through Englewood, 8 of them come through Littleton. But the plant is owned 50-50 between the two cities. Total population served is 300,000. Littleton pays Englewood to administer the plant. So that's why South Platte Renew actually flows up through City of Englewood staffing and government. So why we all report up through Sean as part of his role as city manager. Our strategic priorities, these are 5 areas that we focus from a strategic perspective. So proactive long-range planning, investment, fiscal responsibility, innovation and partnerships. SPR Safe, we are a 53-acre complex industrial site, and safety was not front of mind, I would say, in the last 3 or 4 years ago, and it's now, we made a concerted effort to make it front of mind. We've had a couple close calls, and then employee experience. The water and wastewater space is much like many other spaces nationally. We're competing for talent, and we're trying to recruit people. It's hard to recruit operators, engineers. Those are 2 really in-demand professions that we're competing against private sector as well as every other utility on the Front Range. And so we're working to try and separate the experience, so it's not just all about, you know, what the comp package is, but it's also about what the work environment is. 2023, our budget was about 35 million. You can see our capital, we spent 85%, 90% of the total budget. So our target is 95. So we were a little bit under, and it's because of that capital number, and that's because of our building project that's underway right now. We'll make up for that next year in 2024. So might be the first time when we actually go to for a budget amendment on the sewer fund because it's just a timing of the money. Some metrics, you can see 7.3 billion gallons of water renewed. We do about 20 MGD, million gallons a day. South Platte, through the 2 cities through South Platte owns 7,000 acres of farmland out by buyers. So we take the solids out of the process and we land apply them to farmland where they're used in, the nutrients are used in place of chemical fertilizer. So it's a renewing process. We also recover our biogas. Our biogas uptime last year, since we hired someone who's a gas, who's focused on gas, who's not a water person, who's focused on gas. And we brought in an outside consultant to help us, which really increased our uptime. We were up 92% of the time last year. And so with our RIN pricing right now, the thing that we focus on is every day that the biogas system is not online, it costs $7,000 in revenue. And so when we're off, we've lost, and we're flaring into the atmosphere, losing $7,000 every day. Now it goes up and down depending on the commodity pricing, but generally it's an incentive to realize the goal is to keep it up and running as much as possible because it results in significant revenue. You can see some of the other, we do a lot. We have an in-house lab, 75,000 lab and analyses performed. And then we do a lot of tour. We want people to see this. We want our community to understand, what it is, what they're paying for on their bill. So if we look at proactive or long-range planning and investment, chemical phosphorus and UV disinfection, this was a project, it's about 17 million. We were under a compliance schedule on that one. We had to have it online by June of 2023, and we finished it a few months early. We came in under budget. This is to meet a nutrient requirement, which is Regulation 85. This is the first phase of nutrient regulations that will be impacting us. The second phase is what's called Regulation 31. That hits us in the mid-2030s, and we anticipate that will cost in excess of $100 million to meet because the levels to which we have to treat go down by a factor of 10 or 20. And our current technology, the way the plant is set up, does not allow for that. So we have significant investment. We're far enough out that we have some time to plan for it. We'll talk about how we're planning for that. Our building was originally built in the 80s and the 90s. It was definitely old and out of date. And so we are, to the left-hand side we've gutted and remodeled that existing building with the existing, it's got good bones. So we're modernizing the interior of that building. And then we've added a wing that you can see off to the right there, which creates this courtyard in the middle. That wing has a new modernized control room, as well as a much more significant process maintenance area. That process maintenance area is where they tear down these big pumps and work on the mechanical systems that are part of the process. So what the plant does is through mechanical systems, biological systems, and chemical systems, we do what nature does for water in about a day, for the solids in about 30 days, and for the gas relatively instantly. So it's accelerating a natural process through those three means. And this modernization will help us be set up for, just the increasing demands of the future. Plus, it's also somewhat of a recruiting tool because it's a nice space to work in. It will be a nice space to work in, so I think it'll help us recruit. I just actually toured Parker Water's new facility this morning, and I had a meeting that I came to. I was at Denver Water's main headquarters this afternoon for a different meeting, and their buildings are a lot bigger and more expensive. And so we're actually getting a pretty significant modernization of this facility for a lot less. I think Parker's budget for their facility was 53 million, and we're at 19. And that's because we're using part of our building. Master plan. So the way master plan processes work, you want to do them every 5 years. We completed our first master plan in 2019, so we're completing our second master plan. The difference is in 2019, it was highly consultant-led. This 2024 is highly internal staff-led. That's because we built up an engineering division, a lot of internal capabilities. Cost of that project's $480,000. And then you can see we have ongoing investments in parts of the process. So we have headworks that we have to make some improvements to. Long term, we'll have to replace this building at some point in time. And that's a significant cost, but that's probably in the 20-year time frame. Same thing with dewatering here. This is where we finish the solids. And we have a trucking operation that we have tractor trailers that 4 times a day take a tractor trailer load out to the farms. That will be modernized. But you can see some of these other things that we're working on. But the most significant project we're working on right now is this modernization of the operations complex. The VIP program is critical to us to pushing out the time frame with which we have to comply with Reg 31. So by treating to a lower level, we gain a year of delay in that construction, that $100 to $200 million project that we have to do in the mid-2030s. We've been participating in this for the past several years. We have accrued 6.5 years of delay. The max we can do is 10, and we anticipate within the window gaining that 10. And so what that does is, instead of needing to come online towards the end of this decade and early 2030s, we'll be able to delay that by 10 years, which gives us more time to plan for it, budget for it, find some technology that works better. But that's a critical program that we participate in. So fiscal responsibility, you see how we go about developing our financial plans and models. The financial plans and models that we develop at South Platte Renew feed directly into the financial models for Englewood Utilities Sewer Enterprise Fund and Littleton Sewer Enterprise Fund. So ours is a cost of service model that feeds financial models because the rates and fees are charged through the enterprise funds. We are essentially a cost, with the exception of the biogas does create a revenue of about $2 million a year. But that cost is run through those enterprise funds. We've also done a lot of work on forecasting, so we've built models and dashboards, and the purpose for that is because we're utilizing them through Englewood, we're utilizing debt, and so we need to make sure that we don't, basically we need to make sure we don't bounce checks, and so we spend a lot of time in, between Casey and Sarah, their staff have developed these really advanced forecasting tools and models that people who are responsible for a budget line item are required to forecast through the end of the year, so that by the end of the year we actually have a really good idea of what the spend will be and what the cash flow is, which then helps us time when we're going to pull debt so that we can minimize interest, things like that. This is our 10-year capital is about 165 million. That's through 2033, and just outside the 10-year, we've got those big $100 million costs. So this just keeps getting bigger as time goes on, because not only do we have the nutrient regulations, but we also have temperature, which so the temperature of the receiving river water, because water comes in warmer. By the time it hits the river, it needs to be colder. So we have to do something regulatorily by the end of the decade. And then PFAS is huge. Those are the forever chemicals. This is a dashboard we show every month to the supervisory committee. Supervisory committee is made up of the 2 city managers and the 2 public works directors. That's essentially the board that administers South Platte Renew. So Sean and his counterpart in Littleton, Jim Becklenberg, are essentially our board that we meet with annually. We have board meeting 3rd Thursday of every month, 3rd or 4th Thursday. But this is one of the things we report out is you know, this is important for us, that cost, the value of the RIN, because when it's over 3, we do really well from a revenue perspective. It's been down as low as like under $1. You can see this is the trend. This is what RINs have done since we started this system in October of 2019. And so you can see what RINs, they're volatile because they're tied to a commodities market. There's some regulatory change that occurred here that caused them to spike. The great thing about RINs and biogas is it's bipartisan. So you have the farmers on one side and you have the environmental lobby on the other side. So they both like it. So it's kind of stable in that respect. This is our gross receivables. This does not count operating costs. So this is what our operating costs are annually. So between variable and fixed operating costs, we have those tracked. We have those well tracked. The original estimate back in 2018 when this was proposed was that this would cost about $500,000 a year. So it wasn't terribly far off when they were projecting into the future. We continue to work to refine those. So all of that, it results in a net profit amount, which essentially says that our payback of the original $7.8 million investment will be Q3 of 2025. Last I heard was July. So we're closing within a year of paying this system off. Now we also run a sensitivity analysis on that. So if RINs are doing great and they're at 360, we might do it by the end of the year. If they're really bad and they tank at 155, we're out at 28. But even then, that's an 8-year payback. So it's still really financially advantageous. And then from an environmental perspective, this is how many car miles we offset. So we're 40 million car miles. Let's see what happens. This is a million cubic feet of RNG produced.
And that payback period's about on target to what you were.
The original estimate was 4 to 7 years.
Yeah.
That's what was proposed in 2018. So I think we're right in that 5-year range.
Yeah.
Pilot Research Center. So this is incredibly important for us from a project perspective because, like I said, we have these looming significant costs in the future. So our approach is to not sit and wait. We are integrating innovation into the system at a pilot system. So you can see those little yellow bays. So what a technology provider can do is they can pull up, they can hook up to our system, they can test whatever proprietary technology they have. we can invest in something that we want to test to try and figure out how to reduce the long-term costs of those PFAS regulations, temperature regulations, nutrient regulations, to instead of just waiting for to get to the deadline and say what technology is available, we're driving the technology because we think we'll be able in the long run to bring it in at a more cost-effective manner. We have partnerships with all of these organizations to do that. So we are accessing and working with all the, a number of universities, NREL, Department of Energy. We have a relationship with a similar size facility in Denmark that we talk to because they're worldwide known as leading innovators in the wastewater and water space. These are our pilot and research projects that we have going right now. So that's a lot of information. A lot of those, I don't even understand what they do. They're very advanced, but they help us in the long run from a treatment perspective. The one that's out there right now is the Colorado School of Mines Direct Potable Reuse Mines Pilot. So if you drive by South Platte Renew, this is turning wastewater into drinking water. So we have that pilot trailer out there right now. We're supposed to be doing a run of beer. Is that right? Have we figured that out?
Yeah, beer for the reuse conference, and then we're going to be producing soda from a local soda company.
So we'll take wastewater, run it through this trailer, produce beverages, hand them out.
I like that.
You start with beer.
You know, because if anything, the alcohol. But you can see all these other things. So Law's nitrification is actually an interesting project. So Law's Distillery, they have a waste byproduct that actually, when we incorporate it into our system, it causes us to use less methanol. And so it's a benefit to them because they don't have to pay to get rid of it. It's a benefit to us because we use less chemical. We also have gone after a number of grants. This was what's called a pitch to pilot. As South Platte led the way on this, and we won a $100,000 grant to test biological phosphorus removal, which advances us towards a solution for Reg 31. We also do a number of community events. We want to get people understanding what it is we do, and we try to create that interface. So we have the river cleanup. We have the water festival, which was rebranded last year, and Casey and her staff continue to try to increase the exposure of that. And then our grease and oil take back every year at Thanksgiving. So if you fry your turkey, feel free to come by Saturday, a week later, and we'll take care of it. Talked about safety. So we had a couple close calls. Biogas, so methane is a odorless, colorless gas. It's a byproduct of the digestion process. That's what some of those big silver domed things are out there. And we had a situation where a contractor left a valve open and backfed a methane gas into the control area. And we were about 10 minutes and one monitoring system away from a catastrophic explosion. Did a stand down for 3 days. This was back in 2022, 21 or 22. We did, I think it was 21 actually.
21.
We did a stand down, completely overhauled our construction process to, we do what are called job hazard analysis and method of procedures. So there's a required processes to make people slow down to ensure that we've accounted for all the potential hazards or things that could go wrong. So that was where this started. And then it's evolved into creating this culture, because safety is actually more of a culture than it is processes and training and things like that. You see what we've done in year one. We rolled it out. We worked with a consultant to build this program. We executed in late 2023, and then did our first year. We actually did our, last week we did our first year a look back of how we've done on safety. And so it's really actually catching it. You can actually sense that it's changing. It's interesting because when you got there, you sensed that it wasn't in the forefront of people's mind. And now just through that repetitive messaging, you can sense that it's part of how people operate. This is what we're planning to continue with. It's a lot of training, safety committees, videos, things like that. Employee experience is the last piece of this. We have a leadership program. We're in our third cohort of this. We do this in combination between Englewood Utilities and South Platte Renew. It's in collaboration with University of Denver, Daniels College of Business. And really what it came out of is back in 2018, 2019, I did the executive MBA at DU. And then out of that, there were a number of leadership concepts that I thought would be great. Worked with their staff to develop a custom program that we have delivered to now 72 staff members. And you can see the last piece, the action learning projects and personal commitments. So each class, the group picks 5 different things that they think isn't working, that needs to be improved. And then they all work together through the course of the 9-month program and create solutions to those problems. So every time we finish a cohort, we've got 5 solutions to ongoing challenges that we've had in our organization. And there's been a lot of recruiting, retention, and one of the most successful ones is what was called stay interviews. And so Casey did a complete round of stay interviews. Instead of doing exit interviews, we do stay interviews to try and figure out why people want to continue to stay. We've done all of SPR. We've done about a third of Englewood Utilities, but it's really been a pretty. It gives us a common leadership language that I think has really helped us do well. So this is a stay interview process. And it produces these spider graphs to tell us how we're doing in these areas. And then we can compare based on division or gender or a number of different categories to figure out where we might potentially need to focus on changing things or improving things. We also have a number of people who are leading in the industry. So you can see Jamie and Casey, Rocky Mountain Water Environment Association, essentially our industry association, covers Colorado, Wyoming, and New Mexico. And so Jamie's a past president of that. Casey is on the board track right now, which is secretary, which is a 5-year process. She's in her first year of it, so welcome to 4 more years of it. Adele Rucker's in our lab. She's the president of the Rocky Mountain Water Quality Analysts Association. Dan DeLauder is the treasurer for the South Platte Coalition. So it's called SP Cure, and it's a regulatory body. And then Blair is the chair of the Colorado Wastewater Utility Council, which is where it interfaces with the state on regulations. And then late last year, I was just elected to the board of directors for the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, which is essentially our national governing industry. It's an industry association that's focused on legislative priorities and policies. So this is the group that last year, towards the fall, there were a couple of board members who testified in front of Congress, and it's really driving national policy and regulations at a federal level. And there's 35 board seats. South Platte Renew used to be one of the primary board members, and then we were off for about 5 years, and then we just got back on. Last thing is we focus on how people appreciation and recognition. So we have what's called a SPARC, South Platte Appreciation and Recognition Committee, and it contributes to the work that the city of Englewood did a couple of years ago, which is based in known, matter, and included. And it essentially works to, it's a employee-led committee that works to help people feel as if they matter in our organization. You can see some of the things that we do. The thing I love the most is we do an annual cornhole tournament that's all of utility, but we do it twice. We do it once in the spring and once in the fall. But we get all of utilities and all of South Platte Renew, and we set up at South Platte Renew for a couple hours. And I think last year we had 35 or 40 teams. And so there's really great participation. People love it. And it gets utilities people and South Platte people talking to each other. There's such an overlap of the two because it's water and wastewater, but because of the ownership model, they can't work on the same projects, but they can talk and they can trade information, and so it's really helped to drive that. Look at that.
Nice.
Sorry, I was a minute under. So that is, that's essentially a snapshot of utilities in South Platte Renew and where we're at.
That's just the snapshot.
Yeah.
We were actually commenting to both Casey and Sarah, I was like, this is a really good deck, we need to, we're gonna be pulling from this deck a lot, so.
I agree, I saw some new graphics and
Yep.
info, it's awesome.
Yeah, I heard both Casey and Sarah's teams have spent the last couple of weeks putting this deck together, and it's really, it's a good reset deck for us to, because I think it's got a lot of really good information in it.
Well, please thank them for us.
Yeah.
Passing along.
So I'm probably gonna rewatch this once it's posted. Give me three things. What three things do you want us to take away from these slides when we build our annual report to council?
So I hope, so as a budget advisory committee, I hope what you walk away with is a sense that there is a lot of thought that goes into the financials, and there's a lot of transparency in the financials. And if I could say, I'd say that's the top priority, because people want to know when the water bill comes in and there's an annual rate increase, why is there a rate increase? And you can see the magnitude of the work that's being done. And so I think the first part is that there is a financial plan, it's long-term, and it's transparent. The second piece is evidence that the money is actually being used, and the money is being used to invest in both the regional wastewater plant and the water system to try and address these long-term, this long-term process of, just deferred maintenance and just underinvestment, essentially. When you keep rates flat for years and years and years, this is what happens. And I think what we've done really well is balance trying to address a lot of things all at once without completely blowing rates up to the point where they get out of whack. We're still the lowest. So as much as we're doing, we're still the lowest of the majority of people in the Front Range. And so I say that's number two. And number three, I think that there's a few pictures in here, but there's 148 positions, which we have most of those filled right now. I'd say we're down probably about 10 or 12 people. So you have about 135 to 140 people who love their work here, love what they do, love the water and wastewater field, love serving the community. And we've worked really hard to bring in people who are dedicated, that are passionate about water and wastewater. And I think it shows in things like when you look at all the partnerships. So those partnerships drive people to want to come work here because they say, wow, we get to work on really cool projects while we're also running a wastewater plant. And so I would say those three things: financial stability and transparency, the money's actually being invested, and the people that we brought in to run and lead this organization, or to work in these two organizations over the last few years have really set us up to be successful over the next, indefinite.
Great. Yeah, because there are some citizens that opened up their utility bill this week and saw that it's going up a few dollars a month, and that's all they see. They don't turn it over and see that we're still on the left end of the spectrum. And they don't see these 6, 7, even 8-figure sums that you've displayed over the last hour.
And it's hard to convey the complexity of it all.
Right.
It's hard for people to understand what goes into turning on your tap or flushing your toilet.
Yeah. Well, I hear you with the personnel, because what I've heard over the last hour and a half is root cause analysis over root cause analysis over root cause analysis. And frequently you said we were short-staffed at the time, or.
It's part of it.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions? You went on the phone. Jay, you got anything?
No, no questions, but yeah, very impressive job with such a long presentation. So thank you for that, and be diving back into it, and I might have follow-up questions.
All right.
Feel free to come out for any tours.
I
Yeah,
did
do
do
need
the
to-
SPR
Oh,
2
thank you.
years ago, and it was awesome. I mean, it's something we could do as a group.
Yeah, yeah,
I have yet to
I've
do
wanted,
this
I haven't
list,
done it either. My wife has, but I haven't done it.
So
And that's what everyone has said.
Yeah,
impressive and you do.
yeah.
I learned a lot.
Here's what I would say. So our ops complex is scheduled to be complete in August. And we'll have a nice meeting room, a nice big conference room that'll be a nice meeting area. If you all would like to do one of your meetings over there, additionally, the Allen plant in August will have a 25-person conference room as part of the Allen plant. So if you'd like to move your meeting to either one of those facilities, to just spend some time for your meeting, and then we can add on half an hour to do a quick tour, just let us know.
Yeah, I think the next time,
Next time we
about
do
a year
this?
from now, but yeah.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah, it would be great to have you out. We love having people at the wastewater plant and the water plant.
Well, thank you. Thank you all again.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Adjourned.
All right,
Everybody.
thanks, everyone.
I guess, was there, I don't think there was any member's choice. I guess I should kind of cut that off, but.
No.
Any member's choice?
I don't have any.
Jay, okay. Okay, we're officially adjourned.
Thank you.
everybody.